human beings can actually change the very nature of the earth.
Because we are already at the tipping point.
The smoke that is being emitted blankets the entire area.
People who live close to the land are going to be harmed.
And it's not just about the animals in the forest.
It's the people's forest that are being logged.
They signed a deal with the government, essentially.
Sell your land. If you don't sell your land, we're going to mine around you.
And if you take that away from me, I've got nothing else, I've got nowhere else to go.
Mi nombre es Pablo Fajardo Mendoza, yo soy abogado de la Amazonía ecuatoriana y estoy representando a 30.000 personas, campesinos e indígenas en un juicio contra Chevron Corporation ante Texaco. Chevron inició a operar o extraer petróleo del Ecuador en el año 1964. En la Amazonía de Ecuador, en esa área habitaban pueblos indígenas. Primero invadió el territorio de los pueblos indígenas y posteriormente fue arrojando todos los tóxicos como agua de formación, petróleo, lodos tóxicos hacia los esteros, ríos de la zona y hacia el mismo suelo como tal. Eso ha provocado una enorme crisis humanitaria, ya que hay cientos o miles de personas que han muerto con cáncer, niños con leucemia, pueblos indígenas devastados, 2 pueblos se extinguieron. Entonces hay un daño inminente al ecosistema, a la vida de la gente y obviamente a los derechos humanos de los pueblos indígenas y campesinos. En el año 93 planteamos nuestra demanda en las Cortes de Nueva York exigiendo que Chevron repare el daño causado. Y hemos pasado 15 años hasta ahora, 9 en Nueva York y otros 5 o 6 en Ecuador. Hasta ahora no tenemos una resolución judicial. He dicho yo en varios lugares, nuestra gente, nuestra población, pese a que ha perdido muchísimo, ha perdido la vida de sus seres queridos, hay cientos de niños huérfanos, hay un ecosistema devastado y que eso es un daño irreparable realmente, porque la vida de la gente no se compra con ninguna plata del mundo. Pese a todo eso, la gente dice, nosotros no queremos que nos indemnicen, que nos den plata para nosotros, solo queremos que limpien lo que está sucio, que el agua esté limpia, que nuestros hijos, que mis hijos puedan vivir en un ambiente sano, sin contaminación, sin estar con un riesgo de morir por cáncer o leucemia. Solo queremos la vida con dignidad.
And imagine yourself, a chemical industry is being established, just 10 meters or even 100 meters from your house, or from where your child goes to school, or where your parents live. Doesn't that affect you? Is that a human right? So the connection is quite apparent, but perhaps one has never examined his or her conscience. That's sufficient enough to be able to appreciate that the connection is quite apparent. Arguing the trees is not bad, but here we are just arguing a human being.
I've never thought about this connection. And for me, that was a very important invitation to come to Geneva in January 2002. It was an expert seminar organized by UN High Commission of Human Rights and United Nations Environmental Program. I was impressed by experts, 23 experts from around the world, from both fields. And human rights people would say, you environmentalists, your rights do not exist, it's animal rights, And if we recognize environmental rights, it means we dilute fundamental human rights. And environmental people, like in Rio in 1992, I know they will say, you human rights people care only about people, and we care about environment. So you are like put people in the center of universe, and it's not right.
But then we found this case in Montana in which they actually overturned legislation of the legislature on the basis that it violated the Constitution protection for environmental rights. And then we found a case in Hungary where they overturned legislation. And then we found the case in the Philippines where they said that even children can defend the rights of future generations. And then a case in Chile. There's a lesson there for us. I believe that the reason that we decided that human rights and the environment are actually one topic, not two, is because our friends around the world taught us.
In my country, Papua New Guinea, environmental rights are human rights because the environment is the people's livelihood. They fish from the waters. They practically live in an environment. So once that environment is destroyed, where else can they go?
Because I grew up in a village and I saw forests being decimated, ostensibly to produce food. And I know that after producing food for a number of years, those lands are now barren and we have no forests. The rain patterns have changed, and that meant that the community is not receiving as much food from those lands as they used to, all because we have interfered very fundamentally with our environment.
There is this particular community, it's called the Umabawang. They live in Sungai Keluan in the Baram district, and they have been fighting to keep their lands for the last 40-50 years. But what happened in the 80s was that many logging companies were encroaching into their land. And then they came up with this idea of doing a reforestation project by planting native species all around their borders, so that they keep away the logging companies, so that the logging companies know that that is their boundary and they should not encroach in. In the end, they did succeed. The government actually wrote back to them and said that they had excluded their entire boundary from the development area.
Very often communities are afraid. They're afraid to speak out, they're afraid to take legal action, because often they're afraid of losing their employment. And in a small place like Jamaica, they don't have to actually just work for the company involved. They just have to work for something that's vaguely related. So for instance, if they work for government, then they don't want to take any action against any government agency that might be involved in whatever is affecting them. So I guess the number one piece of advice is don't be afraid. I mean, you have rights, and you should not be afraid to enforce those rights.
Take off the blindfold. Take off the blindfold, because human rights people know very well that when you're blindfolded and then tortured, that's part of being tortured, is being blindfolded. But if the human rights organizations also have a blindfold in which they're only thinking about what they thought about before, and they're not looking at people, they need to listen to people from other countries and not only look at their own sort of training. And of course they do, but they need to listen to a broader spectrum. They need to listen to the people who will tell them that if my child gets sick, it's a violation of my child's human right, not just tell them if I'm beaten in jail, it's a violation of human rights. So the human rights community needs to broaden its vision.
Yo pienso, hasta ahora nosotros hemos estado, o mucha gente aún está, pensando que es imposible hacer frente a una empresa poderosa. Pensamos que no somos capaces, que es una empresa grande y que yo no puedo vencerla ni puedo ni siquiera decirle algo. Creo que esa mentalidad hay que dejarla atrás. Somos capaces y es posible. Es posible hacerlo. Nuestros pueblos amazónicos son 30.000 personas que están directamente afectadas, todos de una pobreza extrema. Pero estamos demostrándole al mundo, es posible cambiar la historia.
The environmental movement is about saving lives.
It's a right to life, it's a right to water, it's a right to information, it's a right to have a say-so in what's happening.
Information means power. If you're powerless, then you can't get an access to justice.
No, you have rights. These are the rights that you have, and you don't have to sell your land.
You're not just protecting yourself, but rather you're protecting Mother Health and the rest of humanity.
Environment is about life.
ngasize kiboto rois itu sotiraini engorenyo gore tapto rois bogoria gore tapto rois bogoria oyele yo kibogo ngasize kiboto rois itu sotiraini engorenyo kibogo ngasize kiboto rois itu sotiraini engorenyo gore tapto rois bogoria gore tapto rois bogoria oyele yo kibogo ngasize kiboto rois itu sotiraini engorenyo